Hello, everybody. Welcome back to OTT Executive Podcast, where we interview leaders of the industry and get to know a little bit about them. And today we're joined by Simon Matar from Robosoft.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here.
Awesome. Welcome. In your role, you're the CTO, is that right?
That's correct. So CTO at Robosoft. That's my role.
Okay, cool. So what we'd like to do here, Simon, is just get a little bit of your background journey, sort of understand your career background, kind of how you got to the current role. So fill us in. Who is Simon and tell us about your career journey.
Perfect. No, thank you. So I'll do the slightly shorter version, but I come from a background of scaling technology teams globally. So I've spent time in Singapore, New York, and London, building various technology focused businesses. Primarily, my career has been focused within KPMG, where I spent about 6 years. And towards the back end as well of my time at KPMG, really went into the AI space as well. As you're aware, professional services is transforming significantly today with the use of AI.
Hmm.
But from that moment, I got the opportunity as well to join Robosoft in the CTO capacity. And it was a very similar problem statement, which is, this is transforming our industry and, the impacts are so significant, but it was just a slightly different focus, right? Instead of professional services, we were now looking at the SDLC and product engineering as well and software engineering. So it's been really great so far. And I mean, there's so much happening in the space and so much opportunity as well. But that's a brief introduction of how I got to this position.
Okay, that's great. And we'll dig into some of those concepts you talked about, SDLC. So what is your current purview or current role, your CTO? Like what kind of things do you work on?
Yeah, so cover essentially the full end-to-end internal strategy from a technology and AI perspective. So large parts of my day just goes into focusing on the AI side of things. Every single day you wake up, there's a new update, there's a new thing that you need to be thinking about in terms of the way AI could be impacting the business. So I'm actively trying to understand what's happening at the frontier, and then how do you bring that frontier into the business as quickly as possible and disseminate that across the business as well. Change management is a big focus for us, right? Because we can deploy the tools, we can deploy the technology, but are people actually using that in their work day to day, and how are they using it as well, right? Because there's a big focus on managing costs, using AI tools effectively. So large parts of my day goes to understanding what's happening, but then how do I also bring that into the business, and how do I connect with our teams to be able to also help them in adopting those technologies?
Yeah, that's great. And there's a lot, that's pretty meaty. There's a lot to dig in on there, and we will do that in a minute. But before we go much further, just give me an update on Robosoft. Who is Robosoft? What do you guys do? Maybe a little bit of background on the company.
Yeah, Robosoft is a very exciting business. So our tagline is, engineering the human experience. And so our primary focus is how do we do the experience and design for digital products and digital experiences as well. That spans a whole set of different types of products and platforms that we could be building for our clients, but ranges everything from applications, platform builds, websites builds, or even going into the design of HMI, human to machine interfaces within vehicles, for example.
Mhm.
So for us, we operate with two primary capabilities. We have our design arm, which understands, what is the experience that we want to be building for the end customer. But then we also have a very closely integrated engineering team as well. And I think
Mhm.
what's unique about Robosoft is we have the combination of both, because otherwise what ends up happening is you have a design agency that creates something that looks great, is very fancy, but it's not actually very easy to implement, right? So because at Robosoft we have the combination of both, we can design something that looks great and it's a fantastic experience for customers, but we also know that we can deliver it, and that's something that customers appreciate.
It's the practical reality of the design. So under, the larger umbrella of sort of the, building digital experiences, right? Including the mobile, the apps, the front end user experience, all the back end sort of technology that needs to come to bear to provide that interface and that experience. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And more and more is how do we do that with AI? But not only that, how do you bring the AI experience into the digital products that we're building as well, right? Because we want to go past just implementing a chatbot as the baseline experience for the way
Yeah.
that AI is coming into an application. That's usually where companies go first, right? They say, let's put a chatbot into this, right? And now we have AI implemented. We really want to go beyond that as well, with our own perspectives as well of how you can bring AI into that digital experience. And I think, the less you almost feel the AI in the experience, the better, right? Because you're just uplifting the underlying experience that customers have. So that's a big focus for us.
So, Simon, it's interesting. So, for my audience, Simon's been one of the experts on some of the research that we're doing in the AI space. So, I think we're going to talk a lot about that today. And one of the things that keeps coming up is kind of more of a feeling as opposed to something that's, declaratively described by the experts that we're interviewing. Is this sort of a nervous excitement about the power of AI and what you can do? But also in some cases, maybe there's, how do you wield that power? It's like the ring of power, right? I'm going very Tolkien here, where you can do a lot of damage if you don't know what you're doing, or you can do random cool things, right? This whole idea of the Skunk Works project in the back room where the engineers come out 6 months later, like, surprise, look what we did without product management directing that or whatever. There's huge potential for that. And so what the industry's saying is, how do we harness all that power? Get the efficiencies, but still have the right end result in terms of, the customer interfaces and experience. So talk to that a little bit about, how does that, what is Robosoft's perspective on that?
Wow, that's a great question. It's a big it's a big question as well. So I think when anyone gets started with the use of AI tools, let's say within the product design process, the initial reaction is holy moly, this can do everything. We can reinvent the whole experience just by using Claude Design or Figma Make or any tool like that, right? And we are seeing that, as you look at the initial ideation phase of a product and the experience you want to design, it is very good just at being able to create mock-ups in terms of that design. Now, what we're also seeing though is that, the human expertise element is still critical, especially as you
Mm.
start to look at putting things into production as well. So what we're seeing is that the ideation phase, it's fantastic. We're able to spin up multiple different prototypes and showcase those ideas and then validate them. But we are seeing as well that as we move further down into the SDLC, software development lifecycle, the importance of having that design expertise and human expertise is critical. That being said, that human expertise is also being uplifted by the tools themselves, right?
Mm.
The way that you manage, for example, your Figma designs is becoming more efficient, right? You can focus more on the high value design intent work rather than focusing on the more administrative side of managing your full Figma board and all of the different screens that you have, because AI is now starting to be able to help you do that. Now, if I just kind of keep that, product experience and design angle to this as well, there's a whole side on software engineering. Another element of this is because we can start to ship so much faster, one of the challenges is how do we create a user experience that also drives adoption and also does not increase clutter in the experience for
Oh.
customers, right? Because now it's like, your ideas are almost not the bottleneck anymore, but the bottleneck is going to start to be more and more as well user adoption and their ability to also just ingest and understand all of these changes that you're making or all the features that you're
Mhm.
deploying. So, how can you increase that velocity in a way that doesn't clutter the experience, but still also delivers the business benefits that you're looking for with those updates that you're shipping? I think is a real balance that everyone is trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's funny. It almost seems like there's a bit of a blurring between the roles of the traditional product manager and the engineering and development team, because they can both invade each other's territory a little bit. The product manager, in terms of the rapid prototyping, and rather than just trying to communicate a list of requirements, it's like, hey, we can do a mock-up and sort of present, where we want to go with this. And then the same thing on the engineering team because they can really push the envelope about what's possible. And so there's an interplay there. Talk about the human dynamics a little bit in terms of how these, from an engineering perspective, let's say, how these teams work together and how that might change in the age of AI.
Yeah, it's another great point. And I think it's actually bringing teams closer together as well, because, what used to happen before is that things kind of just get thrown over the fence and it's like, hey, here's a user story. Now go build this, right? But to your point, with rapid prototyping, with our ability to quickly visualize what we're looking to achieve, both, from a product perspective or design perspective, or even an engineer as well can come up with a product idea and then go back to the product team themselves and discuss it, right? What we're seeing is that collaboration becomes a lot easier because now we can actually communicate through visual examples and visual demos between the teams themselves. I think the point that you raised around the roles is also valid, to a certain extent. I do think that we see, you know, roles starting to be able to, kind of cover areas that might not be traditional for them. But I still think we are in the, I would say, relatively early stage of, like, what will end up becoming a mature AI native SDLC forming. So I think those types of role evolutions will continue to happen. I still see the, distinct roles for a product manager or
Mhm.
through a UX UI designer, through a software engineer, right? Those still exist. But
Yep.
you are right that certain activities are starting to converge a bit between them.
Maybe they're not being blended, but they're being better informed about, what's over on the other side, right? The complaint, in the product design side, product life cycle has always been throwing things over the wall and then expecting to get, the result that you're looking for, and the churn that happens when you don't hit the mark and everything. So all of that is sort of accelerated. The other trend, or the other kind of thread that we've been hearing in some of the interviews we're doing with leaders in the industry, is this idea that because we've got this powerful tool, it does automate certain amount of kind of, lower mid-level functions, but it requires a higher level, of oversight, let's say, or management in terms of that process to make sure that it's hitting the mark, make sure that it's QA'd properly. How does, and I know this is really important at Robosoft, how do you work with clients to kind of insert yourself at the right level and guide that process to the proper, end result?
Yeah, it's another great point, and I think the first one is for us to be able to guide clients on that. We ourselves have to be experts in the way that
Mm,
we also embed AI into the software development lifecycle. I think one of the core aspects of the strategy that we're driving to do that is also partnering with the leading vendors as well within the AI coding space. So we recently announced a partnership with Cursor, and we're actively involved with them. And our objective with that partnership is to be able to learn from Cursor, what is the best practice that is happening at the frontier. The capabilities of, for example, Cursor as a coding platform is increasing every single day with new features being
hmm
brought in that also need to be adopted into the SDLC. So what we're also doing at Robosoft is we're talking to these vendors and understanding how do we bring that into the process, validating that ourselves as well. But once we do have that expertise and understanding, that's also when we bring in those best practices into our clients.
hmm
I think just one other, kind of proof point there as well is clients often ask us, what are the right coding tools for us to even use, right?
hmm
And so as Robosoft, what we did is, we ran a study across multiple different coding development tools. Ultimately, we landed on Kiro, Cursor, and Claude Code as the three main ones that we tested. And through that, what we actually did is we built an OTT platform, the same one, three times from scratch. So it was the exact same scope, the exact same
Cool.
platform, but we built it three times on each of these three platforms. And then after that, we measured what was the overall efficiency, the lessons learned, the quality, and the overall satisfaction as well from the engineers, in terms of building that same platform. And that really gave us lots of learnings in terms of what you can do depending on the technology. And then we're bringing that into our clients as well.
That's brilliant. And it occurs to me that that could change 6 months from now, like what the state of the art is. It also occurs to me that this whole idea of sort of, working with outsourced development teams is changing from kind of like, hey, I've got headcount or I've got a hole to fill in terms of a skill set on my team, and more about experience and value and being able to leverage all that insight that you have from doing your internal tests, but also working with other clients. So there's something there about, hey, we're changing the way that we engage with outside vendors to develop our code and build our products and services, right? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think, when we view it, from the Robosoft lens, right, we really want to be viewed as a partner for our clients, right? And
Mhm.
there's a couple of ways that we do that as well. I think the first one is, that the people that engage with our clients, they should be coming in with this level of expertise and understanding as well. So, if there's, for example, an SDLC, AI native SDLC that the client is forming or have formed already,
Hmm.
We would like, our people to be able to adopt to that quite quickly, or even in some cases be able to add in guidance to, say, hey, this area of the SDLC could be improved. Have you considered this latest trend, right? And that just ends up becoming an additional value out of engaging with their people through that. Now, other ways that we also engage with clients is that we do the end-to-end product build as well. And in those cases, right, we also want to be able to showcase the value of, all of this investment that we're making into the AI space. Part of that, for example, is really demoing early in the process, the rapid
Mm.
prototyping and being able to showcase that to clients, right? So they have the confidence early on to see, this is what we can expect to start to happen from a design and product perspective. So I think, there's these new touch points along the SDLC that we're starting to form so that we can also give the confidence to clients on these
Mhm.
types of, end-to-end delivery engagements as well. And for them to also see the way that AI is adding value to that
Mhm.
engagement.
So one of the big trends, Simon, in the OTT industry, and you know this, is just the level of mergers and acquisitions that's happening. You've got different development teams coming together. I know you can't talk about this, but Warner Brothers Discovery being a big customer of Robosoft and other big vendors out there, there's a lot of churn out there, and we talk a lot about the problem of choice, where there's so many options for consumers, not just in terms of content, but the number of apps they need to navigate. How do you help clients, merge towards something that's more unified, right? Bringing, maybe disparate code sets, together to provide like a seamless experience. Like, maybe talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, when we look at that, right, I think one of the big challenges as well is how can you bring in, these acquisitions into an experience that feels unified and into an
Mm,
overall product narrative that also makes sense to the end consumer, right? Let's say you go through an acquisition and you have, multiple different new brands as part of that. Let's say, it's a news segment or a sports segment or an entertainment segment, right? But traditionally you might not have had those before. How do you actually bring that into something that feels cohesive to the end customer and consumer? I think this is again kind of coming back to that point of like demoing early and demoing fast and rapidly
mm,
prototyping with AI is really important because before you'd go through, I think, extensive ideation processes and strategies and even PowerPoints as well, ultimately landing on, an overall design experience and narrative for that consumer, right? I think the approach we take, right, is we actually prototype that very quickly early on from a platform perspective and from an app perspective, right? So you can really see, okay, hey, now that we put this type of, brand or this type of content into this space, that's how it's going to feel. And then you can also start to adjust that very quickly because you can touch and you can start to experience it, right? So I think how you bring that together for the consumer in a way that makes sense to them is a key question from an experience side.
hmm And there's been this talk about creating sort of a super app for some of these, these giant, sort of media entertainment brands where they're integrating, various apps and content libraries, different geographies, localization, internationalization. Is that something you can help clients with?
Yeah, I think the idea of a super app is really interesting. I think as you move more and more into the AI age, I think if you own intent as a platform, which is to say that the user comes to you with the intention of consuming a certain content, and you are the provider that they go to for that intent, then that is going to be a big competitive advantage, right? The way that you're able to surface content intelligently is only going to continue to improve. And I think the whole experience around a super app, for example, is going to only be enhanced with the use of AI.
Mm,
Before, the way that you would build a super app would be through more like traditional recommendation algorithms or, or even just, hard coded, experiences. In that, you're not able to actually surface the content specifically within a broader portfolio of content for that user, right? So I actually think super apps become more viable as a real experience that doesn't feel too cluttered for end
mm,
users as we come into the AI age. And I think that actually ends up becoming a competitive advantage because if I know I can go to this specific platform and I will be served multiple different points of content and that platform essentially owns the intent that I have to go and consume that
hmm
content, I think that's going to be a big, way to capture consumers as well and capture engagement in the AI age.
Yeah, for sure. And this idea of just having to be flexible with not only the app and the content, the apps you're trying to integrate and the content you're trying to serve up to the consumer, but also the demographic of who the consumer is. I know just watching my children, they're all adults now. The way they consume content is very different from me. I like my linear grids and EPGs and they're like, let me just get cut to the chase and give me a search window, maybe a couple recommended titles. So flexibility is pretty important, and I imagine AI will help with that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as you start to kind of go further down the line of what could become possible soon with AI, I think also interfaces that start to dynamically generate as well based off of the specific user start to come into scope in the future as well. And an interface that also learns about the user and is able to then dynamically start to generate these components that would, of course, be set with certain parameters as well, based off of the intent of that consumer as well would be very exciting. And I think that would really start to also unlock super apps as a concept because the risk with super apps, in my own experience as well, and is that they can be very cluttered. They can be,
Yeah.
very scary to navigate as well because there's just so much that's happening, right? So if you're able to move to that type of dynamic interface in the future as well through the use of AI, I think that can really start to set apart, super apps from an experience perspective.
Yeah, I think the clutter problem is a big one. You can integrate too much requirements from different demographics or whatever and just have a big hot mess and no one wants that. So, that flexibility is really important. So Simon, we're almost out of time. One of the things we like to do on this podcast is a little different, is get to know a little bit about you and any interest or hobbies that you can share with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a personal side, I'm a big tennis player and also recently padel player. So I'm based out of London and there's a lot of tennis and padel courts here. So
Oh,
I enjoy doing
nice.
that. But yeah, it's fantastic, right? I still haven't been to Wimbledon. I think that's
Oh, I
one
was
of
going to
my
ask you, what? You're in London, you haven't been to Wimbledon?
I've not. No, I was in New York before that, and I
Okay.
did go to the U.S. Open very frequently. So my
Okay.
hope is to be able to go catch a couple of Wimbledon games. I know, the French Open is on right now, and Paris is not too far away, so it's a bit
There we
tempting
go.
to jump on a train. But yeah, other than that, most of my free time goes around just playing around with AI as well. Recently, we really started to use Claude Design. It's a fantastic tool, so we do that. And I'm, prototyping a lot of my own ideas on the free time, right? Because it really unlocks your creativity. So, you have an idea, you can now bring it into life as well. So that's another way that I spend it.
That's so cool. And I've heard that described too. Like the promise of AI isn't just that it does things more efficiently, it takes away the psychological roadblock of being daunted by trying new things, right? Because you can dabble in a lot of different things, and sometimes that just opens the door to a creative journey where you actually complete things that you normally would say, I don't have time for that, or I don't know how to figure that out. So I think that's really powerful. I should take my own medicine because I'm just I guess I'm not a Luddite, but I'm definitely kind of a neophyte when it comes to understanding the true power of what AI can do for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the other challenge as well, though, is now you have an idea and you're like, okay, now I have to build it because I know I can, right? And then you just start having more ideas as well. So it's fantastic. But my idea backlog is actually just growing because I'm like, oh, hey, I could do this now or I could do that. So
It's funny. It's almost like there's like a new version of AI FOMO, right? You're fearing missing out on what you could do that AI has made possible now, right?
oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, this would go into a whole nother trajectory of conversation. There's AI FOMO, and then there's also the way that you're working with AI, right? Because I set a task out into Claude to go and do something, right? And I know it might take 3 to 4 or 5 minutes. Like, how do I then spend that 3 to 4 or 5 minutes as well productively? Also ends up becoming a skill set, right? Because it takes a while for that to get inferenced at times. So, yeah, I mean, I think the AI FOMO is real. You almost have an urge to consistently be working with it at this point. So, I
Yeah,
agree.
I've always wanted to write a book, and I'm thinking, I have no excuse not to now, with AI as a tool and a helpmate. Well, listen, Simon, I really appreciate your time. This has been, we could talk for hours, especially about AI. Definitely want to check back in with you sometime in the future and see how the journey might have changed. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Once again, this is Brian Mahoney, president of the OTT executive community and the CEO of Trend Research. I've been joined by Simon Matar, the CTO of Robosoft. Thanks, Simon.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Signing off.